got the
I know
it's
you got to have something to say about the
well,
Super Bowl.
it's
Come on,
ironic
Dennis.
because the my reaction to the Super Bowl will actually get me into a psychological thing I think
Okay.
is going
Yeah.
on. So it's actually it's interesting because I always make these notes before we start talking.
Yeah.
So, but that's part of the game is in a big part. All right, here we go. Excuse me to all those watching the video as I clear my throat.
Yeah.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? You get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method. And that just means, folks, we're going to use statistics in a smarter way. Hey, I remember, Professor, that I had a statistics professor
Yeah.
that showed me that within a rounding error, he could prove that the earth was flat.
Yeah.
If you pick the right rounding error. So use statistics in a smart way to guide you to the answer rather than trying to cherry pick a stat to support what you're trying to prove. That's what the scientific method is about. Let the statistics find the answers for you. And joining me as does each and every week. He is a real professor. He's the fantasy professor. It's John Bush. John, I'm still trying to get over the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a Chiefs fan. I know that was hard to take. Uh, I'm sure you got some ideas about where it all went. It really took one of the worst performances by multiple players, I think, to put the dagger in the Chiefs side of it, and Philadelphia just kept doing what they've been doing. In other words, I don't think it was like Philadelphia got better. I just think they were doing what they've been doing, and the Chiefs just failed to, live up to what they needed to keep up with Philadelphia. And you and I thought that the uh, over under that it would be an under game, and it was looking that way. Then all of a sudden, it just it went crazy, and the over was definitely the way to play it there. Uh, Barkley should have scored a touchdown, and I think that's probably what I needed in my parlay. But uh, I was close, but that's why I only bet $2. Crazy parlay there.
So I have a comparison to make on what happened
Okay.
in this game. And it's a comparison to what happened to me a few years ago in a fantasy football playoff situation.
Yeah.
Remember the 5 touchdown game for Kamara?
Yeah.
Puts up like 50 plus points in fantasy football. You were beating that. And that's what happened in this game. But imagine if you're going up against Kamara and you got 3 of your guys that failed to score 5 points. Now you're really buried. There is no way that you're going to have any chance of rebounding. That game really came down to the last 2.5 minutes of the first half. If KC goes down and just scores a field goal and goes into the half at 10-3 down, and with the ball in the second half, they got a shot. But as soon as they gave up 14 points at the end of that, it was like, see ya. Start planning the parade, Philadelphia. Because you just cannot come back from that kind of a whooping. And it's just like leading off your fantasy football playoffs with having Alvin Kamara put up 55 points on you. Or imagine if you're going team and they had Chase scoring 50 and Kamara scoring 50. on the same week, you'd be like, it's over. That's what happened to the Chiefs. They were just totally dominated. They did not play their best game, and the Eagles did. And that ended up being the situation. But the overreactions to this got me thinking about how we think when it comes to football and the NFL. All of a sudden, before the game, 2 minutes before kickoff, Mahomes is one of the greatest of all time. Okay? Nobody's ever gone their first 7 years as a starter and taken his team to the AFC Championship or better in all 7 seasons in a row. Nobody's ever done that. Nobody's won that many Super Bowls before age 30. So you're looking at it going, and he's on the par with Brady, with Montana. No, he's not the GOAT. I'd put him third behind Brady and Montana, but he's at least in the team photo for greatest quarterback ever. And he's only like 7 seasons into his career, really, as a starter. So he's got a lot of ways to go of shortening that gap between him and the other 2 GOATs, the other 2 guys that I would consider to be in contention for the greatest of all time at the quarterback position. But suddenly, after one bad game, oh, he's not even the best quarterback in the NFL anymore. Oh, he's this, he's that. We do the same thing in fantasy football every year, Professor. Oh, this guy is the greatest thing. He's the greatest guy. He's our first round pick. He has 2 bad weeks. Oh, he sucks. I wonder if social media, the instant overreaction of social media, where people either agree with you 100% or think you're the biggest bozo in the world, I wonder if the invention of social media and so many people living their lives on social media nowadays, especially younger folks than us. I mean, we'll go on there and have our fun, but we can walk away. There's some people that seem absolutely addicted to the social media world, and they need that validation on social media that they're either they're a good person by what they say. That overreaction that social media is building into our brains, I think is affecting the way we look at things in life, including a blowout Super Bowl game.
Dennis, I didn't become a psychologist, so I don't know where I could, top that one there. See, my dog's trying to top it. Hey, beat me an animal. Yeah, and it's starting already. People already, got their mock drafts out and already starting to pick sleepers and values and things that supposedly is ready for August to get here tomorrow. So I don't know if it's a lot of work to February 15th to be worried about what's going to go on in August right now. We haven't even have the rookie draft. So it's crazy, the psychological side of needing to do these extra early leagues and whatnot. My data says I'm probably losing money at least playing in June. When I've tracked it, I don't do well compared to August. So I'm not guessing. I'm seeing the result in my pocket, that ROI. And so I'll just hold my powder and let Twitter spin around a little bit.
People are already drafting on Underdog for next year.
Yeah.
I've got a cheat sheet of who my preliminary guys are for next year. I know who I like right now. on February 15th as we're recording this. I wouldn't put any money on it. We've got free agency. We got the NFL draft. We got guys trying to rehab injuries. We don't even know what we don't know right now, but people are so addicted to that instant of everything in life that they're already putting money on this. I think it's absolutely one of the silliest things to be doing. I have not even dabbled in one single $2 draft, let alone play any serious money on this or doing these big tournaments with, 4 million people, and a $2 million prize or whatever. No, like, unless your diary tells you that you are really good at this, I wouldn't even be wasting $2 on it at this point.
I'd actually thought you can go on FFPC. They got best ball slims already. I was like, I may join $5, get the data. Maybe I'll exit if it doesn't fill before I can still exit. Just grab that ADP look in just for my records here, whatnot. But I'm in the middle of researching my one of our metrics that we used last year. We had a lengthy discussion about that pre-show, and I probably should have recorded that. I don't know. We get going, and I thought about things, and we probably should circle back around to talk about what we talked about before the pre-show. But I'm working on the Bush number, which is a way to look at weekly performance across all positions. I don't look at defenses, but kickers, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So I'm comparing them all together in a weekly way. And that was different than what we've done before. And in some ways, it's just a good way to. I think it's a different way, different enough that it gives us some insight. And again, we want to be consensus, and we also would like on occasion to find players that are hidden, right? That people are not seeing what we're seeing. I think that gives us an opportunity to get a value. At least I want to think that. I mean, that's the idea. Is from horse racing, is you find the overlay, right?
Yeah.
You're able to put some data together in a way that a lot of people are not paying attention to. And there's certain times and events, in the horse racing when certain factors, I mean, young horses trying things for the first time. I mean, there's a lot of breeders, data, jockey, trainers, the genetics of who grandpa was of the horse and, mother was a fodder kind of thing. And, you put all that together and, if you read the tea leaves right and you get enough value, it can pay off. And that's what we're kind of doing this time. So I'm still looking backward. Uh, and I'm looking only at the Bush number. I'll be going back to the COM data, counts over median data. I'll be adding last year's data to the mix and trying to get a little deep into that. That's coming, and then I'll be doing some other data as well. Dennis, I know, is watching all the rookies and whatnot, and he'll be looking for opportunities and where things are good for certain players or could be good, I guess. It's always kind of after the fact whether it was good or not. But, we want to find the next Bucky Irwin or Puka or somebody that's a little bit hidden, right? And there's a lot of data out there, and we're trying to figure out a way to to shuffle through that data. And so anyway, Dennis, let you comment, and then if you want, we can go to where I'm at on the Bush data. I've got some things you haven't seen, and we'll have a video of some of those figures. And I will make a lesson, but I just hadn't been inspired yet. I just retired from 30 years at the university, and I'm not ready to lecture yet. I mean, so I don't know. I've been lecturing too long anyway. But anyway, comment, and then we'll look at some data, Dennis, and give you your data therapy for the week.
And I really need some data therapy. But yeah, and here's the thing, folks. I already have my consensus between my three different metrics that I use. One looks only at upside. One looks at consistency on steroids. Both of those two discount any injury concerns, discount any rookie to sophomore slump or any of the other theories that are out there. Just they just look at full games played. How did the player do? That's all I care about. And it's a 2-year sample of data. Then the third one I added in last year was my best index that does factor in injury concerns. It also has a factor that will limit how great a rookie might appear on that data, because we have seen players have that big sophomore slump. We are not sure how to spot that. So I have a technical way to sort of penalize those rookies a little bit, if you will. And it's not meant to eliminate second-year players from my data. It's just to set the bar high, because we've only seen one great season. Was that a fluke? Was that because the rest of the team was so bad that that player had to have a Superman-like season? For instance, Jaden Daniels. What if the Washington Commanders defense gets much better with more players, better players coming in this season? We already saw a jump from the previous year to this year. If that defense gets better, Jaden Daniels' numbers will not get any better. Now, if he stays the same, he's pretty damn good. But my best index does try to account for that unknown by saying, if you haven't shown me 2 great years or more, then I'm going to take what you did last year and I'm going to be a little concerned. Now, to show you how it works for quarterbacks, he's my quarterback 5 right now. That ain't too bad, is it?
I'm interested.
So that's kind of where I am right now in the data journey, is trying to figure out what that means. I'll be looking back at last year. I will actually be doing some work using my consistency stat, MVP, for both defenses and for kickers this year to see if we can gain an advantage over streaming those positions. My guess is that we probably can't, but I got time to look at it this offseason, so I will. I'm not going to go crazy into it because I've got lots of other things to experiment on. And then to add your data to my data to come up with what we expect to be our database that looks at who we like the most using our methodology that we developed last year that we'll be talking more about in the weeks ahead. But I am really intrigued to see where this Bush number goes. I told you last year, I think you have something here that is really going to pay off.
Yeah. So I've got some slides. I've got 74 slides. This is we've talked about this last couple of weeks while we've done the playoffs and the Super Bowls and things. This is uh, shows the data for the tight ends. I don't necessarily know why I started with tight ends. Some part of me realizes that in some ways there's a lot of variation in tight ends, and it's just probably a little different than other positions. So I started with that. What you see here is the player. This is for 2024. This is the end of the season. The first through 48th weekly uh, number there, and 49th through 96, 97 to 144, and then basically 145 to the end. So weekly. And the percentage is the number of weeks the player was performing in that slice, right? So the best piece of the pie is the top piece, right? That good frosting and the soft part of the cake. If you cut it kind
Mm.
of, right there, one to
Oh.
the 48th slice. And
Mm.
George Kittle had 53% of the weeks he played were in that. So he, by that metric, was the best tight end performance last year. McBride was second at 44. Bowers and Janu and Travis and Njoku were kind of that next tier, I guess. Andrews at 27, K. Dotton at 23, Laporta and Zach Ertz. So there's that. And you can look at the percentages that certain players scored in other slices. And then I started thinking the high and the low. I call it the hit or the miss week, right? So if you take 53 and you take the 145 or lower, 13%, you divide that kind of a ratio, it's 4. Okay, so that's skewed to the goodness, right? So it hit or miss, that means lots of it were hit weeks.
Ooh.
McBride was 3.5. And notice the next bet was 2. So there's this concept of great weeks and not a lot of bad weeks, Dennis, is one way to measure that, right? And then here's the next group of data, and you can look and you know, and if you go down this next group, the best by the hit or miss was Ingram. Okay, in all this group, he was kind of interesting. Didn't play as many weeks. There were some injuries, but relative to the high and the low, uh, did pretty good compared to a lot of other ones. In other words, if you had any of these other ones, you were taking a lot of bad weeks, Dennis. Look at the number of
Wow.
weeks. Yeah. So
Wow.
you were really, people get cranky over tight ends. Well, I can tell you why. Because most of the time, uh, people like Kittle and McBride, etc., that's rare. I mean, above 30%, I mean, we're talking 6. So if you didn't have those 6, most of the weeks, it was pretty much like this. About half the time,
Oof.
it was sucking. So, you know that, in 12 league teams, somebody's got all 6 of these. So that meant that you were, if you didn't have them, then that means you were in these 6 and you were losing that positional battle, you know, each week. And yeah, if you did head to head, you were just hoping your Henry was better than their Komet, that kind of thing. In other words, you were the best of the worst that week kind of thing. And I know these are good tight ends, but relative to what we're trying to do here, uh, you
Well,
know,
if you want to really put it in perspective,
yeah,
in another using another tool. So look at Kittle versus Kelsey in your way of looking at things. Okay.
yep, 53,
53 to the good to
31.
31 to the good,
But look at the hit miss.
13 to the bad to 44 to the bad.
Yep.
That that's why Kittle for last year alone, not counting anything but last year's data,
Yeah.
an MVP of 121.4.
Yeah.
Kelsey, 62.5. It's finding similar things.
Yeah.
It's just showing it in a different way.
Yeah.
But what I would argue is you do not want somebody 44% of the time failing to reach the top 144. That's terrible.
That's rough.
Like 144, I want most of my starters to be in those first three groups. I want them to be in the top 144. That's not asking a lot from your squad.
Yeah.
So that's a stark analysis there. I realized that Kelsey's numbers were down, but boy, till I see this, you look at the high side. We think of the high side. We think of the great
That's what
games.
I'm saying. You're missing.
And he had 50% of his games in the top 96. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
At tight end. But he
the
had
dagger in your heart was the
44.
other 50.
Wow. Yeah. That's just crazy.
Of the top tight ends, Dennis, he was the highest failure rate.
Yeah. And that's what made him not a great pick last year.
For redraft, but I might argue
yeah.
in best ball.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you were getting 30%. I mean, he wasn't you didn't get hurt by him in best ball as much as in redraft. If you played him every week,
yep.
Close to 50% of the time you were losing that positional battle. So you were having to make up somewhere else. And, that can be hard some weeks, So if you had a suboptimal team, Dennis, elsewhere, you were really in a bind to make up for that. You really were. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't like to see guys that are missing. Like that's a huge percent of games. I would like to draft a team that doesn't have my starters. I want my starters here. This is not asking for a lot. I want my starters to suck less than 25% of the time.
Yeah.
That's not asking a lot in redraft. And that is something that you look at this data and boy, there's only a handful of tight ends that meet that criteria.
So every week, half your league was, if you had some of these other ones, you were in a bind against them. Every week, the 50% of the time. So 8 weeks, you were going in with a losing situation that you had to overcome.
Shows the value of those elite tight ends, but two of those guys that are over 30% in the top slice, were huge values. Actually, 3 of them, because Brock Bowers was a huge value as well. So half of the 6 players did not reside in that top 6.
Yeah, I didn't look at
ADP. That's a shock to me at this tight end position. I thought we were better at picking tight ends than that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, yeah. So anyway, I converted last year. The Bush number was this 1 to 48 slice, and so when you get that number, divide it by the games played, and I just didn't convert to percent here, but 53%. But anyway, so I scaled that. You get Kittle at 100. So on the scale of 100, he was the best. Then McBride basically an 80. Then Janu, Njoku, and Bowers at in the 60s. Kelsey at a 50, and so forth. So the green and the non-green just kind of showing the tiers, Dennis. You can see where at the end of the season where things were ending up here a little bit. So just using that, so that's how we did the Bush number last year. Okay. And then in 2023, just looking back, uh, somebody like Laporta, wow, and Hawkinson, those are really sad for this year, but our numbers were really happy. But notice who was number two? Kittle. So I had him in almost half my drafted leagues. If I didn't take Kelsey, which in retrospect, I should have been, I overplayed him and I didn't get enough Kittle and I got too much Kelsey, right? I mean, after the fact, right? Monday morning quarterback. I loved Njoku, Ingram. I loved Hawkinson. I really thought he was going to, come well and whatnot. But that was kind of our view of 2023 going into 2024. And if you grabbed Kittle in this data, would have said Laporta or Kittle. And I think the value wasn't Laporta like number one or number two in
Yeah,
ADP?
Laporta was way up there.
Yeah.
And that's
So
yeah.
my numbers would have said that Kittle was better and certainly Njoku. So I was drafting, Dennis, that if I decided and didn't get Kelsey, then I was targeting Kittle. I was trying to get Kittle and Hawkinson is what I was trying to do back to back or within, a few rounds. And if I missed him, then I was trying to pick up these guys with Hawkinson. Okay. Because I think McBride was gone by then. So I was trying to pick those guys up using that data. And here's some more you can just see uh, and whatnot. So, trying to pick things up. And so this was the actual tier process in 2023. But
A lot closer.
Andrews, yeah, and Kittle were in the second tier. And I think value wise, they were better than Laporta. And Kelsey was in the third tier with Hawkinson that you could get round 12. So he was my second tight end because I could wait that long. And then in this group, I was leaning Ingram, Njoku because I don't think you could get McBride. I didn't get a lot of him. I got some Henry. And then some of the others, I probably weren't picking any of these people up. Started picking up Smith after, the early weeks because it was, and Otten I was picking up, and Logan didn't even end up playing. So it was kind of lean on some of these guys, but that was kind of the strategy I used. And I got lucky that a lot of my drafts, I got, unfortunately, Kelsey, but in a lot of them, I got Kittle as well. And like I said, I always tend to pair them with Hawkinson, and that didn't work out as like I wanted it to. So that was what we had, and we used this number, Dennis. I averaged it with our other five metrics,
Yeah.
and that's where we were last year. And like I said, I calculated 24. So going in, we can certainly use this, but I've got data to modify the Bush factor, and I was going to take you through that. If you're curious about 2013 to 2024,
Oh wow.
and I look at the first through 96th, metric and just look at the distribution over those 12 years. I was, looking at that. Here's the first to 48th picking here, and a lot of outliers, which is very, when you see a lot like this, I always get worried, Dennis, that things are not, this metric is not where it needs to be. In other words, it looks like the so-called outliers are more the rule than the exception in some ways. So I got worried about that. When I saw this I was a little bit worried about the 1 to 46, but I look at 1 to 48 slice and I saw all this over the 12 years. I'm like, boy, that's a lot of exceptions. Because usually you don't have but 2 or 3 outliers, and everything else is a lot smoother and inside the box and whiskers. And that's not what I saw. And I will be monitoring this for the other positions, Dennis. But the tight end was the first one I chose, and this seemed a little, just got worried, a little choppy here.
Well, I
Go
think
ahead.
what we're seeing, Professor, is just an indication because this is 11 year, well, 12 years of data,
Yeah,
basically. What we're seeing is each of those represents the super tight
elites.
end, the tight end elite
Oh,
of those particular years. And
but
what
they're
it tell
really standing out
they're
from the
really
crowd.
really standing out, but what it tells you is that that elite tight end having Kittle on your team
Mhm.
last year rather than having somebody who lives in the box,
Yep.
which is the highest percentage of that population and includes some guys that you had to pay to get. Picking right on elite tight end sets you well on your way, especially if you get him in a value position like Kittle. It sets you up for a tremendous fantasy football year. That's how I read this chart.
Yeah.
It,
That's it.
because I think the outliers are just so extreme that if you nail that up outlier, you're a gold for the season. You have a room for error at other positions.
Interesting. Interesting. So I looked at just the uh, average 1 to 96 tight end scoring per game over the years. And so I did the average in the blue triangles. The yellow is the 5 year moving average, and the red is the polynomial trend line. Two different trend lines here. And Dennis, what I'm seeing is a decline in tight end scoring from these early years to, and both the moving average and the polynomial is kind of showing that we've, hit this, kind of like 2020, on the last 4 years, we've been in declining, and both the moving average and both trend lines are suggesting that. So I wasn't sure what that meant. I just made note of that, and I'll follow the other positions as well. So I did the moving average for you because you like that
I
metric.
love moving averages.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think you can see both of them are kind of pointing down. So, you know, given what you just said, that might suggest that, I guess if I did a year to year, in other words, if I did a box and whisker year to year, I'm wondering how thin the box is getting recently. In other words, is it collapsing and everybody's starting to be more the same than maybe the preceding, the first 5 or 6 in this data? That so that would mean sameness is not really good for us. We want distinction, right? We want the elites. So I'm wondering, and I don't know quite how to value the value, but these elites might be even more valuable if everybody else is closer to being the same. In other words, if this is a trend to being more the same, everybody's closer to the average, then and then the elites are standing out, they may be even more valuable, Dennis. And I'm not quite, I think I need deeper stats to figure that out, but that's what I got from this data a little bit.
Yeah, and that coincides with what I've been seeing with the MVP index, where I've been seeing a decline and seeing that that top group is very elite. Like it is, when you look at just the year to year data,
Yeah.
we go from, looking at the absolute best in 2022, 129.4.
Yeah.
The best in 23 was 92.3. And then the best last year was 121.4. So if you look at the big picture of things, I think there's a decline going on that is showing up in the data. And I'm not sure how much of that we can read and say, okay, 25 is the top tight end or the tight end group is going to be down even more. That's what the trend line and that's what the red line are telling you is I think a downward motion for 25 at tight end as a group is probably the case. Does the group of elite tight ends
I mean, I
has
could graph that too.
has that grown any? I'm not sure
So
what
I'm
the
saying if I
number
did year to
is.
year, Dennis, and I took the outliers and say drafted the lowest outlier, the ones above the whisker, and we plotted that over time, it may be, you know, maybe there's not a decline. I don't know. I haven't done that data yet. I could do that data.
I,
I
I
don't know.
like looking at the group as a whole
Yeah.
because it gives you an idea of okay, how did we do?
Yeah.
How did we put more tight ends in that top 96 week to week? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
And the decline from a top of 150 to a low of 114 is probably a significant number.
Yeah.
That's a pretty decent percentage of change over that time. It's not like we're in a decline, but we've gone from 150 to 147.
Yeah. No, no, no.
This is a significant decline that we have seen. And yes, there is some variability from year to year, but that's where I like this 5-year average. Because the 5-year average says
it's
we're
declining as well.
probably not going to be any higher. We would have to go up to 125, 128 to break the downslide. And I don't think we're going to do that. Do we stay flat at a 121? Maybe. Do we see a bounce? Possible. We had a bounce from 114 up to 126, so that's possible to see a bounce from 121 to maybe 136. But if I had to put money on it, I would say probably below 128 for next season, which lets us understand okay, the elite at the tight end is still thin. If we can nail the outlier at tight end at a decent price in the draft, it's that concept of getting, if there's 4 in a group, if there's 4 in a top group of anything, if I get that, the cheapest of the top four, that leaves room for improvement at every other position. And from what we've seen at tight end, that seems possible. And again, you don't have to be. We liked Jonnu Smith last year.
Yes.
We're drafting a lot of Jonnu Smith because he was on a great offense, and we liked that. Did we expect a Jonnu Smith top four,
No.
top five finish? No. But we knew he was going to be much higher than the consensus. And that's what paid off. Next year, if I had to vote and pick who's going to be the top tight end at the end of the year, I'd probably say Trey McBride. Because I don't think he's going to score as few touchdowns as he did this year. I think he's going to revert to a more normal touchdown distribution, which is going to help his number. And he had a pretty high number without the touchdowns. That's intriguing to me. And if you look at Kittle, he was the same way. He didn't have a monster touchdown year. He had kind of an average touchdown year. So maybe that tells us what we need to look for if we're looking for consistency at tight end. Look at the guys who are going to post some good yardage. And maybe those are the guys we want.
So this data is just showing 1-96 slice per game played. And in that, McBride's a little higher than Kittle, than Bowers, right? Then Andrews, then Goddard actually was under the radar. Njoku, Smith, Kelsey way down here.
Yep.
So Kelsey's slice of 500 is way back to 2015, Dennis.
Wow.
Look at when he's, his heyday was 2022.
Oh, yeah.
And declined 2020, but really dropped. So, you wonder. I don't think people are going to draft Kelsey high. If even, people are talking about he's going to retire. I don't know. What do you think? Is he going to retire? Is he done? Is he cooked? He got a lot of stuff on his plate out there.
Yeah. Here's the thing with Kelsey. I'll probably be wrong on this guess. He's got one more year on his contract. Yes, he could walk away if he wants to. But I think he's going to come away from a whooping in the Super Bowl to say, if I didn't have that contract, if I was a free agent right now, yeah, it's over. I'm calling it a day. But with 1 year left on his contract, I think he might say, you know what? I'm going to give it one more year. This is it. Win or lose, I'm done at the end of this season. He's going to take kind of a victory tour season.
Yeah. Couple things to go ahead.
But I don't know what that means in fantasy football because he's in a clear decline. And what I don't like to see is with older players, I've never seen a 2-year decline turn into a positive in the third year. So decline. You got to think he's going to decline even further in 2025. And according to this data, he was 8th best last year.
Yeah.
8th best is not horrible. If I can get 8th best and he's being drafted 12th, I'm happy.
Yeah, you're getting a little by.
But if I'm getting 8th best and I got to draft him in the top 4,
gonna be lean.
Ain't gonna take that bet.
I think McBride, Kittle, Bowers. I think it's lining up like I think the public may try to grab, and maybe Laporta, would people give him, a shot. I will say this about Laporta, that he declined, but not as much as you would think.
He,
And if you look at the players that really improved, Tucker Kraft, which I know you've talked about,
yes.
Ertz came back, Goddard came back with this slice. So those are three that I'm kind of, not necessarily my tight end one type, but, a tight end two or a best ball, those guys may be worth your time. That in best ball and things, that a lot of times who my number two is can win you a week or two, Dennis.
Yeah, and in best ball, I will make the argument that I don't care if I have the super elite guy.
Yeah.
If I can have enough shots, if I can have 3 shots at guys, let's say I get Hunter Henry, David Njoku, and Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
I get those 3 guys.
You almost think you get about 9 weeks of goodness between them.
I'm thinking I'm liking my chances because I'm getting them all at a decent value.
Yeah.
In the draft. I didn't have to spend up to get them. And I'm probably getting a result that is equal to if I picked Mark
Kittle,
Andrews.
yeah, or McBride.
Yeah.
9 weeks. Yeah. So anyway, Dennis, and you can't see, but I was just tracking year to year, green to green. In other words, 2023 green, and they were 2024. The green's about the top. I think it might be the top third or something. I was just kind of grabbing like 50% goodness versus not, which, you might think, wow, that's lower than I would like. It's like a coin flip. We had one rookie, if you throw out Taysom Hill, they had one rookie, Bowers, that came in. The rest of the ones that, were the first one on was like 23 of them. That's not good. Non-green to green. In other words, they would be clear here that would be green, was 6 out of basically 100, 6%. Non-green to green, 84 out of 92, Dennis.
Wow.
So for you to think, oh, in other words, you got to be really slick in your diary to show you can pick that 6% that I'm not saying is green in 2024. Are you good enough to do that? You better have something if you're trying to grab your good tight end from a one that didn't make the first cut. I will say that. Here's 2023. It was 12 to 18 green to green, 6 to 18 green to non-green, non-green to green, 3 out of 71. So it is lean. If you look those 2 years, I mean, you could add that. So it's 9 out of about 160 or so, non-green to green. In other words, you're going to pick 9 out of 160 in the marbles. They're all 160 white, and you're going to be able to pick the blue one. There's 6 of them or 9 of them, whatever it was, 6. Yeah, 9. So you're picking the 9. Ooh. In other words, I don't know if it's worth your time to pull your hair out in that hunt, Dennis. I think better to stick to the trying to pick the green to green and the green to non-green. In other words, who's going to drop, who's not, might be more worth your time. Anyway, I just wanted to look at those numbers as well, and this is 2022, 8 out of 16 green to green, 8 out of 16 green to non-green.
So that number is pretty stable from year
It
to year. If you
is
look
the
at it,
last
yeah.
3, yeah. Non-green to green, 6 out of 100. So you have 15 out of about 260. Dennis.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's just interesting. You can look back and see what you want to see there. And I looked at the scoring of 1 to 48 slice, 1 to 96. Here's the 96, and here are the triangles, and the 48 is the boxes there. Just looking for overall yearly trends. I think there's a decline, but I just wanted to track that. I'm not sure I take a lot of that away. Uh, this was just overall scoring. I lined up 2024 sorted, and then I looked across how many times players had been green. You know, Kittle's only been non-green 1 year, his rookie year. Everything else, he's in the money, Dennis. That kind of thing. Look at
Hmm.
somebody like Janu. A lot of years of sadness,
Oh yeah,
but boy, woke up last year. So what does that say? Njoku's had 3 good years.
in a row too,
Yeah. So
which
that's interesting.
surprises me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just wanted to see a scale just across these years, just for us to look at. I'm not saying good or bad. I just wanted to see what it was all about, and then I went further just to kind of look at some that, declined. And, you don't see you see some declines and whatnot. So I just have that data, and I'll have that out I don't know when. There's no hurry, folks. I mean, it'd be better if you ought to listen, remember, take notes, and then go in and you look at the data and see what you think. Because you've got to learn how to fish. Dennis, I can give you the fish. I can give you the fire, but you got to chop the wood, folks. You don't want to be dependent. It's no fun. I know. Well, I just want the winners, right? Dr. Bush, tell me what's going to be on the test. It's just not doing anybody any good. And, I just said, so you're going to be a surgeon, and you walk into the best surgeon. Hey, just show me how to do this. Because I really didn't learn any of this stuff. Like, oh yeah, I want you as surgeon on my kids. I want you to have blood, sweat, and tears to get to where you are. So I'm just saying, if I'm paying you, I want you to be at least at this level, Dennis. And no offense, Dennis, I'm rigorous wise. I'm not seeing a lot of those folks out there on the Twitter, Dennis. I'm yet to see them. When this is hours of work. I'm not seeing it. People say, "Oh, I'm grinding up." I say, "Well, what's your definition of grinding? Like, what do you think a sleeper is? What's your definition? You know, you wait 2 weeks before you go put something out and you work. Dennis and I have been working for the last month on this year, folks. So
And here's the thing is it's not work when you enjoy it.
no, no,
And
it's not.
and it's it and this is a process though, folks, that you have to enjoy the discovery as much as you enjoy cashing the winning ticket at the end here. You got to enjoy the handicapping process in order to get better.
Yeah,
And you know, anybody can get lucky 1 year. But what this data is telling me is that if I've got a tight end who's been green on green for, let's say he's green on green on green, he's gone 3 years in a row in the green, he's got a high percentage of at least hitting the green in year 4. And
Dennis,
that's kind of what I want.
Dennis, I've done that data.
I knew you had.
Yeah, and it's not as good as you think.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's very intriguing. But so what I did here, Dennis, I went to the 1 to 48 slice and just threw out everybody that was 0 weeks. So I
Gotcha.
try to, just threw out the obvious duds and then looked at the. So, folks, when you see this kind of uh, trend, that is not linear. That is
No.
exponential, or some other math equation explains that. Logarithmic.
Yeah, it's a
It's not.
logarithmic curve. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not what we think here. And I put the green to show you the top of the box and the top of the whisker, and you see the outliers here. Okay, so you can look at it like that, but that's why I like the box. So I can see 0.5 to 0.25. There it is. That's the whisker, right? So you can just kind of get it. So notice for the most part, everybody's after the whisker, Dennis. There's a lot of sameness out there, and people talk about the late tight end that at some point what you pick in some ways is about the same as the other picks. And if you completely miss out on any of these potential elites, you might as well just stream and try to get you
Yeah.
two or three that will get you a week or two if you're lucky, you know, and then you horse them together. So I just, you know, and then I just threw this data just to kind of remind folks about the tops each year and what that was. So, Dennis, you saw the way we did the bush before.
Yes.
So I wanted to take the data and use principal component analysis. And I was really intrigued by it's where you take these slices and you compare them to each other and you see the effects, the suggested. And there's a couple ways to do this, but let me just show you this. Dennis hadn't seen this.
Oh, no, not yet.
So it's called a path diagram. Look for tight ends at 145 to 253. You remember the hit miss
Oh,
scenario?
yeah. Yep.
That red means it's inverse. If and what I'm looking at is points, average points per game at the end of the season. In other words, putting points in, and you can see the slices that are positive, and there's one slice that's negative. So now it is very clear. Previously, Dennis, we've been here 1 to 48.
Yep.
I ignored this.
Oh, yeah.
And you see, I'm thinking we can make a better Bush number because I want the downside, Dennis. So, and again, I think you've done that by you've split your metrics to kind of have the high and the low concept versus the best
Yes.
concept. I mean, you've recognized, and I think anybody who's done data recognizes at some point, you're stepping out there and there's nothing under you, right? There's no net anymore. In fact, it's opposite. It's an anti-net. It's sucking you over the edge. And Kelsey was an example. Is it any wonder now that we see the over, and this is from 2013 to 24. So this is 12 years of data. So this is not just 1 year of data. This is 12 years. And it is clear that you've I think, got to include that in your mix. Okay. So well, I'll stop here. What you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering when I see this. First of all, it tells you that if you've got a high percentage in that 145 to 253 slice,
Like
that's an
Kelsey.
avoid that's an avoidance zone.
So would we, if I had thought about Kelsey a little more, and if I knew that, right? I mean, I didn't,
Yes.
but imagine somebody showed you and said, this is what's going to happen. In other words, a lot of people project the good. Dennis.
Yes.
Imagine if you develop metrics to project the bad.
Yeah,
This
and
would
that's
tell me I don't want Kelsey last year. If I could have, if I was a fortune teller, that's the slice I'd want you to tell me about now. Look at the thickness. That's the impact as well. So the green is positive, the red is negative, and the thickness is the intensity. So really, if you can predict the bad, you got as much advantage, if not more, than predicting the good for the Bush number.
in looking at the data, if I look at a player, okay, and I don't attach a name, but I see that he dropped from 129 in MVP in 2022
Uh-huh.
to 80 in 2023, what would be my logical conclusion of where he's going in 2024, especially if he's getting older?
Yeah.
And that's where using my 2-year data slice without adjusting it has kind of led me to the guess of saying, for an older player, maybe I should oversample the last year versus 2 years ago. And for a younger player, maybe I oversample the current year versus 2 years ago. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's best to do it for everybody. I'm not really sure, but
Principal
I'm
component, Dennis,
yeah.
if I look at it in your data set, I can give you this kind of pattern.
And I
It's
think
coming. It's
that's,
coming.
yeah. And I think that's going to be the next analysis I want from
Well, first, I
MVP.
think we'll look within these numbers, and I think
Yes.
we'll look between these numbers. So, MVP, best, calm, Bush, the Vegas props, and we'll look at all that.
Perfect. Perfect.
Now, I will say we just have one year, and my Bush number, I may be changing it. So that's some conundrum. So I'm not sure when we're really going to have that data, but I just wanted to show you that. So fast forward, it's a little hard to see, but if I look at the multiple regression, that slice counts as a 0.9 minus. The 1 to 48 is a 0.598 plus. And here's the other. So now I can recalculate using this equation, Dennis. And so now I get the linear regression Bush figure, LR.
Ooh.
And so that shows you Kittle, McBride. Uh-oh, who's this? Ingram.
Yes.
Because I'm sampling the positives and the negatives. And that tells me that Ingram did just enough that he wasn't in the super negative a lot. And so I'm not saying I'm taking him as my tight end one, but I'm saying I think we need to look at him very carefully, Dennis, as a good surprising, maybe tight end two in best ball but I'm just saying, then here's Bowers, the Joku Smith. And so I'm not sure there's any big surprise. He was the big surprise for me. Look at Kelsey, Dennis,
Drops out.
minus.
Yeah.
Dennis, he's been minus 1 year. I think he was hurt that year in 2016. Look, so it's very bad last year. Very bad. So,
And
yeah.
and that's the only problem with Ingram is, does he play next year? And
Dennis,
that's a big concern after his injury again.
yeah.
And he possibly could be retiring. But
Well,
if he doesn't, he is the perfect value tight end proposition because I think he will fly under the radar. The other guy I like is Njoku.
Yeah, he's
I
flying
mean,
under.
and
Look, he's
he
been
should
in the
be
negatives, Dennis. Last year, a positive, and this year took a really nice step forward.
very interesting.
So I knew
Yeah,
you'd like this. Isn't this
yeah.
it? So I think, well, I'm thinking we need to change the Bush number to reflect. I think the model's telling us we're foolish if we ignore this. You know, I that's my thinking now in February, and I calculated the other ones as well. Look at old Hawkinson. I'm so sad. He really screwed the pooch after that injury. So I just
but do we write that year off
yeah, I don't know.
due
I
to
mean,
injury? Does he
Dennis, I
bounce
mean, this
back?
is yeah.
Yeah,
Here we go. I mean, we can look green to green and things like that, and uh, and I think this was 2023. He
what
was number one
yeah,
2023, and he dropped
yeah.
down.
What would be interesting to look at is when we look at guys either dropping off or improving, can we come up with a reason? Hawkinson, not healthy. Kelsey, getting older. Cole Kmet, the fourth option on the team instead of being the second option the previous year.
Yeah.
Um, let's look at Dalton Schultz. Just a really bad year, but even his best years, even the previous year was a negative.
Yeah. Look
So
at
we get
Kittle. Kittle had minus, nice.
huge improvement.
A huge year. He's going back, Dennis, to these years.
So does that tell us that if San Francisco has two healthy wide receivers and a healthy CMC, that Kittle is going to be way overdrafted next
Yeah,
year?
that's yeah.
Very interesting data.
Yeah.
There are arguments to be made on this data that, again,
And I
look at the
tiered it out
guys.
for us, Dennis, so we could have some more, debates. And I did 2023 tiers and 2024. So green to green. Sorry. Here's green to green, 49%, non-green to green, 5%. So, but notice with the Bush number, LR, it's still about 50-50, green to green. So even though the equation changed, the results in some ways from year to year about the same. So that's interesting. I got to figure out what that means. And if you're non-green and you expect them to come really roaring back, it's rare.
Still
5%.
5%.
And we're
Yeah.
just about what we've seen with the other one. The double green to green, 34, double green to non-green, 35. It's the same number, Dennis.
Wow.
So I think there's so much tied in variation. I think I've seen in quarterbacks double have been significant. Comms have been significant difference. They've been this you wouldn't see this with other positions, but with tight ends, I think we are. So that was a surprise to me. So that I think tight ends have to be thought of differently now. I don't think I'm not sure we should go too far back. I'm not sure that's given us anything. We got to think
Interesting.
about that. Yeah. So the last thing I'll show you, I just did this Friday. I started looking at quarterbacks, and remember this slicing 1 to 48,
Yep.
49 to 96, so forth. So the last slice. So when I made the pattern with quarterbacks, remember the tight ends, the four slices. The fourth slice was a
Yep.
inverse.
Yep.
Here's the quarterback model. It wouldn't even measure the last one. It was giving me errors from 40, 145 out.
That makes a lot of sense to me
Doesn't
because
it though?
your quarterbacks are going to score much more, but to see the same pattern emerge
It's
is
just
it.
constricted in.
So
So
what
almost
this
throw out that last slice for quarterbacks.
correct and what I'm wondering is, do we get a better Bush number if we take those first two slices versus the negative slice?
Well, what I'm doing, and this is where I'm doing today, is I am going to combine the 97 out number and look at that versus these two. And then I'm going to combine 1 to 96 versus 97 out for quarterbacks. In other
Very
words, the
interesting.
model suggested I can't act like they're tight ends. Remember
No.
the tight end model.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So positional wise, folks, it's different. And all these players and people on Twitter that are flapping their chops, they're not telling you any of this. Only a data
No,
scientist could kind of look at it like this. And I'm saying, well, deep in the weeds. But again, did you pick up when Dennis is looking what he's saying? He's trying to forecast what's going on. Okay, I never advocated I'm drafting Evan Ingram no matter what. No, I just deliberately didn't say anything other than here's the data, Dennis. Dennis jumps in and says what his forecast comments. And I think that's why Dennis and I are the old Sonic and Knuckles of the data world, is because I let Dennis do his thing at that point. And we got to August to chew on this a little bit and think about what it means. My job as Sonic, I want to think I'm Sonic. We'll let Dennis, he's a tough guy. If you saw him, be like, I don't want to get in the ring with this guy. He's rough. His center of gravity, he'll knock you out. He's got a hell of a center of gravity. So he is the original Knuckles. Okay. So I'm the Sonic, and my Sonic, I just stopped. I said, Dennis, I'm not going to tell you anything more. Here it is. You take it from here, Knuckles. It's like a relay race. And that's how Dennis and I are going to whip your butt if you end up in the league when we're both out. So draft not out, folks. Any of you listening, probably not, because you think you're slicker than us. That's fine. Be
so
slick.
so
But
we
I'm
have to
telling you, we're coming.
we
Both
have to
barrels, Sonic
so
and Knuckles, are coming for you next year.
so we have to
So
decide, Professor,
yeah,
though,
yeah,
whether see here's the thing.
yeah,
If we both get that deluxe package for the expo,
yeah. Do we want that?
we have to decide whether we're playing against
I
each
don't know.
other
I
or
don't
in
want to.
different leagues in
Yeah, I
draft
don't know.
night
I
out.
don't know.
So
It's more fun to shuck and jive with all of them in there. That I enjoyed
we did have
watching
a good
some of
time at
these
that.
people sucking on lemons as we were doing our tricks here. I enjoyed that. That made me happy. But anyway, Dennis, I just did this Friday. I got to think about it, but I'm going to have to revamp all my data and I'll be working on quarterbacks next. I don't know where we'll be next week, but I can report back a little bit. But I
Love it.
think there's things, but imagine us looking at your MVP like this and
Oh,
looking at the years. We can do years and look at those as slices and compare how they should be weighted. I,
yeah.
I'm
And
going to give you that. I think we can do that data, and I think we'll at least have a way to look at it, and we might revamp it a little bit or not.
I love that idea because here's the thing with
And
anything in
maybe it's
data.
positional, Dennis.
It could
Maybe
be.
we should go certain positions, other ones maybe not.
Yeah. And the question is there an age of a particular player where,
And if we had the age, we could put that in there as a slice.
and maybe when it comes to my MVP, when you get to a certain age,
Yeah,
your most recent effort is all you get.
yeah,
And otherwise, I'm going to use the 2 year data
uh-huh.
to give me more data points.
Yeah,
But as soon as you hit a certain age,
yeah.
I'm going to assume that any decline is either going to decline further or stay the same and not bounce back, because I have not seen players yet above a certain age decline 2 in a row and then bounce back a third year. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but we're facing probabilities here. If I look at a probability, there's only a 5% chance of stumbling across the right player. I'm not very intrigued with that method.
Nope.
But if there's a 70% likelihood that it'll guide me to the right player, and now I can apply multiple variables, multiple indices, and I'm picking the top 70% using all of those. And now my overlapping best 70% of all 6 ends up with a green light for that player on all 6. I'm feeling pretty good about that player early in the draft. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Oh, folks, lots more data coming. And I'm going to have some review articles and start to have a little bit more popping up now that the football season is officially over. The data season can officially begin. And I encourage you to also check out all of the lesson plans from the professor, whether you're a newbie to fantasy football or you've been playing for 20 years. You will learn something special from Dr. Bush. And then I head on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
I'm feeling Sonic today. Get to work. That was good. You like
Yeah.
that Sonic and Knuckles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The low center of gravity. That's
Dennis, that
me.
is you. See, people are fooled by that. I'm not. I've seen, I mean, in martial arts,
Oh yeah.
you've
Yeah.
got the physique to fool a lot of people, especially in judo or something.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, I know your bones are getting brittle. You've had a hard life, but putting up with all the coworkers at your work, they brittle your bones or sucks that calcium out. Every time you get pissed off at them, that little bit of calcium leaks out of your bones. Just tell your boss, my professor says, my guru professor says you're sucking the calcium out of my bones. My density's going down working it here.
So my
They should give you some complimentary yogurt or milk or some vitamin D or something. They need to pep everybody's step up there. Some
so I
frosted flakes cereal or something with some milk, something.
There you go. My freshman year of high school, I wrestled.
Why am I
And
not surprised, Dennis?
I was the development special because the lowest weight class
Yeah,
in high school is 97 pounds.
yeah,
I was freshman year,
yeah,
I didn't even hit 80.
yeah,
Okay. The the seniors on the wrestling team,
yeah,
if I saw them in the cafeteria
yeah,
and I called them out, they
yeah,
had to buy me a milkshake per the coach of
yeah,
the freshman team. And
yeah.
a lot of them did it because they were hilarious. So I would wrestle exhibition matches before the regular matches
Yeah.
against whoever the other team decided,
Yeah.
like their 97-pound guy that didn't make that he wasn't wrestling that day.
Mhm.
Well, one day the coach comes up to me, he says, they don't have any mini mites. That's what they used to call us,
Yeah. Mini
the little
mites.
guys. He
I
says,
called you mighty mites, but
yeah,
anyway,
mini mites.
mini
He says
mites.
that the but the extra wrestler that they have is 110. He weighs 110 pounds.
Wow.
Like, bring him on. So it was the most ridiculous look because this guy had height on me.
Yeah.
Hip tossed him. Like,
Yeah.
that's a move for a heavyweight.
Yeah.
And I hip tossed the guy
Yeah.
out of pinned, and the referee said we were out of bounds. This guy was so pissed that this little dude got him. And that's exactly what the coach, he says, you're center of gravity, man. You got none. You're at the ground. Of course you beat this guy.
Yeah.
But that's hilarious that you bringing up the center of gravity
Well,
thing.
Dennis,
Got a
first,
flashback to
look, I
Coach
mean,
Behringer.
look, I've had physiology. I understand that. And so for a
Yeah.
biologist, Dennis, when I look at people, those are things, I think about, somebody's real tall. I'm thinking, their gait. I just start almost experimenting. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. Let me see how they do this. That's more the physiology class. We used
Yep.
to, we'd think about bone length and tendons. And, he started talking. I think he might have been an athlete or something. But anyway, he was very applied to human physiology and things like that. So it's just something that stuck with me just for my curiosity. So when I go to the uh to the expo this year, Dennis, I'll pick you out some more mighty mites for you. The big draft night out guy, I don't know. I think you'd get one surprise at him, and then I think he'd just bear hug you, and
Oh
you
Lord.
would, But I think you might get him surprised. You know, you'd have one shot at him before you kind of woke him up a little bit. But you and
Oh
that guy, I
God.
love that picture. I showed that to Becky when we first. I said, Becky,
Oh
I said,
yeah.
of course I joked. I said, Becky, Dennis was about to get me in trouble. I was going to step in as his second. He was picking on this guy here. He laughed and laughed.
Old Disco, man. He was
He
a
was
cool
big
dude.
guy. He's a big
He was
guy.
a large human being,
Yeah.
but about the nicest
Oh, you're
guy
nicest guy.
you'd
No
ever want to
doubt. We
meet.
really had a
Yeah.
good time at the
And
expo
the
this
fact that
year.
he played along with
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
silliness is what made it really
Yeah.
fun.
Well, he's
So,
probably had that before. He was really good. So yeah, we got to do some thinking on the expo a little bit. Well, I guess we've done the after the show jokes and yucks, so we'll have more on the quarterback. I'm not sure, Dennis. I don't know how the model's going to go yet. I'm going to do a couple different ways to look at the data.
love
So
it.
I don't know what we're going to do. And then now I'm curious about the running backs and wide receivers, how it's going to play. I mean, I wasn't, in other words, if you would have told me, I didn't go in expecting anything, Dennis. I try not to bias anything.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just treat everybody the same, and then all
Yep.
this. But when I saw that model, it's like,
Oof.
okay, this is just not right. So
That
anyway,
was intriguing.
yeah,
That's
I think it's,
really intriguing.
yeah, I think it just was out of bounds. It was so crazy, you
I'm
know.
very interested to see if does that trend hold at other positions?
Yeah, I
Is
don't
there
know. I'm
is there
going to predict the
some
tight end is going to be like the wide receiver, but I wonder what the running back's going to do, you know?
yeah, I'm
And the
I'm
kicker,
wondering.
I'm wondering
Yeah.
what the kicker's going to do.
Yeah, and this is PPR.
Yeah, but I'm
So
going to do, Dennis, I'm going to run the kicker
yeah.
through here. Just,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
you know, just for maybe streaming kickers or just curiosity.
Well, if you got the data, you might as well run it.
I got the data for the
Is the
kicker.
thing, and
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of intriguing stuff that can pop up, and that's
Yep.
exactly why I'm running the MVP numbers
Yep.
on defense and kickers. Do we see anything?
Yeah. Well,
Is
I'm
there?
going to,
Yeah.
like I said, get you this data uh, once I do it. I think I'll give you maybe the two numbers, maybe the original number and the LR number for the book. I don't know right now, but what
Yeah.
the only thing in the back of my mind is if they're about the same year to year, then I'm wondering if you look at both, do you catch anything that's unusual? Like Evan Ingram popped up with the one.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would rather find something and make me think about it as you because you stepped in and started applying your forecasting skills. And so right now, that kind of when you did that, Dennis, that made me have to do more work, but that's okay. I don't mind doing various versions. I would rather catch something one way or the other, to try to, figure it out at the next level. That's what I want to do is keep it. You don't throw away things prematurely.
Oh,
Data,
no,
and I
no.
know in meteorology, if you had some outliers, you didn't just, hey, look, this is weird, throw it away. No, you might, who knows? Next year you might have some more outliers, and that could be very important. It could tell you something you're not seeing. So to
Yeah.
me, having an outlier like an Ingram is good. And it means that we can think a little deeper about things. And that's what I think eventually the man machine mix, that's how we do it appropriately is we allow the man side to come in, your forecasting skills to come in and look at the machine side. And I'm hoping that will, give us a good advantage. So I'm looking forward to that. So folks, that's where I think we're going the next few months. I don't know. We'll have lots of things. I don't know what we end up. And we don't
Yeah.
plan. Dennis and I never plan anything. So I mean, I having been on other shows, some of them are pretty rigorous. You kind of know exactly where everybody's going, and that's fine. But to me, the way I like to learn is I like kind of let it all fly out, kind of a no ringmaster in the circus. If things are swinging around, I want to see it. And I think you can get surprising information by doing it that way. I don't like the rigorous approach. I would rather keep the blinkers off, Dennis. We're doing blinkers off in our data analysis here.
Yeah, and the thing is, and I'm constantly talking about the forecasting aspect of what I learned on the job in weather forecasting and how that applies to the science of fantasy football. And there is a lot of crossover, and
Uh-huh.
that's the interesting thing. Like, but you will discover once you get into the patterns of things and the more years of data and the more years of understanding, for instance, in hurricane and tropical storm forecasting, what I learned was we always think of strength of the storm as how powerful the storm is. And what I learned from years of forecasting was when it came to the track of the storm, it was the total size of the storm that mattered. And that made a lot of sense to me when I thought about it, because if you've got a huge ship on the ocean, it's harder to get that thing to turn.
Mhm.
If you've got a smaller boat, it's easier to turn that storm or turn that boat in a sharper turn. And in meteorology, they were always talking about strength of storm. And if it's this strong of a storm, it is not going to turn very fast. And this is, there's the physics behind it. I'm like, okay, I get that, but you can have a strong storm that is really compact. Those storms, and that's a rarity. Okay, so that's the outlier of the whisker. That's
Yeah.
the whisker of the box of storms. That one's going to perform different than the storms that are in the box. The ones that are okay, it's this many miles across and it's this strength. This is how it's going to react as far as turning radius of a storm, which is important when it comes to tropical storm forecasting. Um, Whenever you look at the spaghetti plot,
Yep.
one of the plots is persistence. Where has it been moving? How is it going to move? And that's always a curve. It's not a straight line. So if it's been curving with this radius, it's going to curve with that radius for the rest of time. That's not logical because they will change as they come north, but at least it gives you a starting point.
Yeah.
In fantasy football, the similarity is seeing this pattern of these Bush number data and to see, okay, this happened with a player that grades like this. Can we explain it with what happened? Injury, age, wide receivers got hurt. When we look at the reasons, can we say, okay, this makes perfect sense, or is it just a random occurrence because a guy had a good year or a bad year? If it's a random occurrence, maybe it's not going to repeat as often. But that's digging into this data and to see these patterns and to see that what intrigued me about your tight end data, when you see the overall curve and the 5-year average both forecasting the same direction,
Yes.
I'm kind of believing it.
Yeah.
I think if there's any rise, it's a small rise. Knowing that, how do we react different going into a fantasy football season in 25? That I'm not sure of yet.
Yeah.
But some of that decision will be made by ADP. If fantasy football consensus is out on Jonnu Smith again for whatever reason, I'm all over that dude.
Yeah.
If fantasy football consensus is all out on Njoku, I'm all out. I'm jumping in with both feet. But if McBride comes in as the third or fourth tight end in ADP, he'll probably be on a lot of my redraft teams.
Yep.
Because I think he has the highest hit potential. And then if you get him third cheap, I think that's going to be this. That's the part of this is I love the fact that we do the data before we know the ADP.
Yes, I'm deliberately not thinking about ADP right
now. No, we're just looking at, okay, I'm forecasting who I think is going to be best. And if you got a top tier of, let's say, 3 players, that all of our analysis, we come out and we say, okay, these are the 3 tight ends that we figure are going to be at the top of the chart next year in all of these different variables. One guy's going early second round, one guy's going third, and the other guy's going 6th round. I'm taking that 6th round guy every single time, or I'm taking him in the 5th round because I want the cheapest of the elite at each position. And that is never going to do you wrong in fantasy football. But right now, our job is to decide who's in that whisker.
Yep.
who's most likely to be in that whisker, and we understand we got to be like guessing, or consensus says 50% is all we have to beat.
Yep.
If we come up with a methodology that can forecast it 80% of the time, we are in really good shape.
Yep.
I don't know if we can do that yet,
I
but
don't know.
I think with the data skills that we can do it better than the average player on the street.
I'm hoping so. I'm
Yeah.
ready to collect. I'm gonna stop recording here. Anyway, folks, that's kind of our show. Woo woo.